You are too small to be a lineman and too slow to be anything else. Those were his words. And I believed him. Sometimes that attitude, those words, those declarations, they become life-altering, destiny-changing words. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Master the story power method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Hey, I'm Loren Norris here with Story Power Academy, and I want you to know we've got a new course dropping just next week. That course is called The Attitude Hack. If you've been a part of the Story Power community, you know that we work on crafting intentional stories. We mine those stories, we craft those stories, we connect those stories to an audience, and we lead a narrative with them. The next level is to take those stories and deploy them in the workplace. And so there's really three phases of that. The first one is we've got to understand the very contagious nature of an attitude. The second is, how does that attitude, those stories that we've been telling, how does that impact your brand and your culture? And then finally, we're going to discuss in this next course, 6 weeks course, we're going to discuss how do you as a leader engineer attitudes, because that's your job as a leader. If you've learned how to mind, craft, and deliver stories, now you're going to learn how to see them work in the workplace. I challenge you to be a part of the Attitude Hack beginning on June 9th.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. I don't know about you, but those words that just sting to the core, they're harsh. They're really harsh sometimes. And you know, the sad part is, sometimes those words, especially from a person of influence in your life, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's like your best friend. But when they speak those harsh words, those judgmental words, those declarative words, those declarations over you, they say those things sometimes carelessly. I mean, they didn't mean to hurt you. They had no idea that it would redirect your destiny. They had no idea that you would give up on a dream because of those words, that you would walk away and never look back. They had no idea that your relationship would be over because of what they said. But as a person of influence in your life, maybe it's a positioned leader, a title, a youth pastor, a teacher, a boss, a supervisor, someone in your organization that significantly outranks you. It's been a repeated theme in my life. And in the chapter of the book that we're talking about right now, again, we're working through Live a More Excellent Life. This is a book I wrote many years ago. I believe the actual published date was like June of 2011, somewhere around there. May have been 2010. Pretty sure it was 2011. We're on page 87, peg removers. The illustration was given to me while I was coaching the Dale Carnegie program. It's been used by many, many people, so I don't even know who to attribute the quote or the notion to, but it's a true fact that when baby elephants are being trained, they take them, whether it's a circus or whatever else, and they put a big giant clamp around their leg. And that giant clamp is normally tied to a really short, heavy chain. And that heavy chain is tied to what you might call a tent stake, not like the little ones like you use for your little 10 by 10 pop-up that the wind always pulls out of the ground and they blow away. No, I mean a tent stake. Like you've ever been in the military, you put those big giant tents, they're like big enough for 100 people to fit under. Those tent stakes, that's a workout just to carry the tent stake to the ground. And then it'll take 2 or 3 people with a good sized sledgehammer to drive it into the ground. Some of those are 3 or 4 feet long. Well, that's exactly what they'll put at the end of that chain for a tiny little elephant. Now, a baby elephant might be 500 or 600 pounds. A full-grown elephant, though, is 5 or 6 tons. And when that baby elephant tries to leave the area where it's supposed to be, that chain drags behind it. It feels some resistance, but then when it gets to the end and that chain hits that peg, that baby elephant is going nowhere, because that tent stake, that peg in the ground, that's the marker. This is your limitation. This is as far as you go. Now, as that elephant gets older and it gets stronger, what it doesn't realize is that I'm a massive beast now. I could probably snap the chain or yank that peg right out of the ground. But the reality is, just like fleas in a jar with a lid on it, they eventually learn what their limit is, and they only go as far as their limit. And this enormous elephant who could walk through buildings, turn cars over with his nose, tusk, trunk, snout, whatever you want to call it. He can flip over a full-size car, step right in the hood, and smush the engine into nothingness. But if that peg is in the ground, you could tie dental floss around his leg. And if he's been trained the same way from birth, when he feels that little bit of resistance on his leg, he stops, dead in his tracks. See, the truth is, there are words in our life, maybe spoken by a coach or a boss or a parent or a friend, when we're young. And those words become those pegs in the ground. And over the series of our life, what we realize is, like fleas jumping, hitting our head, eventually we modify our leap to only reach that level. When those pegs are driven in the ground, the elephant modifies the distance it will travel, the things that it will push against. The journey of life is defined by that one location, that one amount of distance that you can go. And any resistance at all causes you to back up. See, when we have those moments in our life from a person of influence, sometimes it's purely subconscious. You've heard me say on this show before, I was raised with the philosophy that the rich get rich and the poor go broke, and it's the rich's fault. Who wants to be rich? And so even when the opportunity was there, even when my income from my paycheck was like just right there, and all I had to do was close 1 or 2 more sales, then I'd be in the 6-figure mark. In my 20s, I could have done that. But I didn't want to be one of those people. I didn't want to be rich. I didn't want to be despised as rich. The millionaires and the billionaires that won't pay their taxes. I didn't want to be one of them. So even though the opportunity was there, so was the peg. So was the belief that there's something wrong with being that kind of person. And the result of that was, even though I came to this awareness when I wrote this book in 2011, it took 14 more years for me to pull that stake out of the ground completely and actually break the 6-figure mark in our income. Why did it take so long? Because it took a long time to put that peg there. It took a long time for me to get to 298 pounds. It took a minute for me to get back to 200 too. I'm not telling you that the only way to reverse this declaration of negativity over your life is going to take you forever. You can make that decision today. But I can tell you that the stories that you tell in your head either will pull those pegs out of the ground or it will drive them in deeper. It will either give you the opportunity to walk free from the things that have been said that are not true, or it will reinforce them even if they're not true. There was a great propagandist, didn't do great propaganda, but was great at the strategy of propaganda many years ago. He said, a lie repeated often enough becomes believed to be true. A lie repeated often enough becomes believed to be true. That doesn't make it true. This means people believe it's true and they act as if. Now, I want to challenge you to ask yourself, do I sometimes recklessly, carelessly, throw out peg moments for other people? There is a narcissistic nature in some people that they don't just accidentally, haphazardly, carelessly throw out peg moments, say words that nail people to the ground in their life. It's their cruelty, it's their meanness, it's their evil intent that causes them to say things that will hurt people. And many of them do it because they feel like, well, either my life is a mess and I'm jealous of yours, or I just want to make sure you're not as good as I am. And I've known people like that whose intention is to keep everyone else behind them. Regardless of my level of success, I can't allow you to achieve the same thing. That's just no, I'm not going to tolerate that. And sometimes it's their own bitterness at their own failure. They are acting this way because they've been nailed to the ground, because they've been chained to a peg of someone else's harsh words, and they're retaliating. If you've ever, the old phrase is don't mess with the junkyard dog. Well, a lot of junkyard dogs are made mean by putting them on a short leash and then teasing them right past their ability to pull. Let me say that again. Many junkyard dogs or guard dogs are made mean by putting them on a short leash and then teasing them from right outside their range. And eventually, if they ever pull free, they're going to tear you up because they want revenge for all the time they haven't been able to get free. Or you see people sometimes with these enormous choke collars with teeth on it that will bite through the fur into their neck. Sometimes they'll tell you that's just to control them, but usually it's just to make them meaner. It's so that they get mad and hurt, and their tolerance for pain goes up. Their meanness goes up. Their desire to get even goes up. There are people who do that to other people in little different ways, in subtle ways. And then there are those who realize, if I can drive this peg in the ground, the stake in the ground in just the right place, instead of being the tent stake with the chain or the rope tied around it that limits your ability to move forward, it becomes, well, like the rock climber's foothold. If you've ever watched rock climbing, where they climb up the rock and then they'll drive a stake into the side of the hill and they'll tie off their safety rope to that, and they'll grab hold of that sometimes and pull themselves up on the next step, the next level. The next achievement is based on how strong is this stake driven into the side of the mountain. Well, what if you were the kind of leader who looked for opportunities to drive that stake into the mountain, that climbing hold, that next step for them? What if you were to say those things that actually give people a lift up? It encourages them, it builds them up, it tells them what they're capable of, that maybe they don't even see it. They didn't know that they could do that. They didn't know it was possible. But your encouragement, your words, your ability to lift them up could reside in those words. So what if you had a giant peg remover to take that 4-foot stake out of the ground and move it to a place that gives them better opportunity? What if you had the ability as a leader, as a person of influence in their life, just to pull that stake completely out of the ground and set them completely free? Are you the kind of person who would do that? Would you look for those words of encouragement that are directed to them? In the attitude hack, we talk about the attitude of expectation. And the attitude of expectation, kind of following the Dale Carnegie premise, give a man a fine reputation to live up to, and he will. Looks for the opportunity to speak words over someone else that says, here's what I expect of you. Not because you're already doing it, but because I can see the potential in you. And rather than tie you to a stake in the ground of right now, I look forward to what could be. When I played football my freshman year in high school, we had a coach, a guy by the name of Steve Roberts. Wonderful guy, huge heart. We were a team of misfits. We were the motley crew if you've ever seen one. Odd-sized, undersized, not the most talented. We had some superstar talent on our team my freshman year, but we just loved the game. And when we went on the field, we played all out. We left our hearts on the field every time. One of my best friends, Tim Monroe, played opposite me on the offensive line and the defensive line. And that guy literally came on the field with a forearm pad and a cast underneath it because he broke his arm in the game before. I mean, we played all out for Coach Roberts. And as a result, our motley little team of players had the best record at the time in the 1980s. We had the best record of a freshman team and the entire history of the school. And we looked at our team and said, you know, if we continue to gel together, to play together the way we played so far, man, we can go all the way to the finals. We can get to the state finals. And we were pounding it hard. We really, really wanted it. The next year, we didn't have Coach Roberts anymore. Oh, we'd outgrown that. He was the freshman coach. And the next set of coaches, I mean, we had coaches for linemen, we had coaches for linebackers, and we had coaches for running backs, and we had coaches for wide receivers, and we had coaches for quarterbacks, and we had coaches for the defensive deep end. And the coach over the linemen looked at 3 or 4 of us that came up from the freshmen and looked at the JV and the varsity team that he currently had, and he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. In fact, there was a time that he actually said to me, look who you're playing second string behind. He was at least 10 inches taller than me, almost 100 pounds heavier than me. Oddly enough, happened to be my next door neighbor who went on to college for scholarships, for football. He was that good. I remember the coach looking at me after I hurt my back the summer of my junior year, and between my junior and senior year. I couldn't play football that year. And I'm laying on the ground, looking straight up. My back hurts so bad. It was from a cliff diving accident with my then girlfriend and her family. But as I was laying on the ground looking up, he just put his hands on his knees and he looked over at me. He didn't say anything. He just shook his head. Like, are you done yet? Are you ready to quit? I got up the field that day. I never went back. Oh, I joined the cheerleading team because that's where my girlfriend was. I wasn't a very good cheerleader because I'm not that nimble, but I could sure carry their equipment, and I would carry their equipment on and off the bus, and I would go to the big games with the team as a pep rally member. I was part of the pep squad because I couldn't play anymore. And I watched us go all the way to quarterfinals, but our team was broken up, and our coaches had an entirely different attitude towards, put the very best at the front, and the rest of them, yeah, whatever. And it was that attitude of our coaches that drove into a lot of us, you're not NFL material, so at this point, you're a waste of my time. I hated that was true. I hated that I can carry that forward because at the time that I wrote this book, in fact, if you grab it and you read from chapter 87 and you read the chapter on the peg movement, the peg remover, tool number 5, you'll see in there that I talk about my son, who at the time was 11 when I wrote this book. He was 11 years old. And I said of him then, you know, his passion for football is even greater than mine. And he was fast. He wasn't very big, but he was fast. And in fact, I said, the odds that he'll get over 5'8", because I'm about 5'8", 5'9", depending on which device I'm standing on, the odds that he'll get over that size, pretty slim. In fact, when I was playing football, I was 5'8", and about 185. And I figured, you know, this kid looks like a spitting image of me. He's probably going to get to about 5'8", 185. And, you know, how in the world, if the coach says you're too small for a lineman and too slow for anything else, what are your odds? And I thought, well, but the kid's fast. He's got a chance. He loves the game. He's got a chance. And so I never told him you can't do this. By the time he was about 15 years old, though, he played for one of those coaches very similar to my coach, sadly, who looked at him and said, you're too small for a just pounding on him till his knees gave out at 15, expecting of him what he wasn't capable of doing. But rather than coaching him up or working on other opportunities for him, he just beat him down until he hated the game and he gave up on it. Irony now, that same kid that I thought he'll never reach 5'9", maybe he'll live his life at 180 pounds. No, he's 6'1" and about 275. He's a big boy. He could have made it as an offensive lineman. He could have made it in college, at least, as an offensive lineman.